like pumpkin spice ale. Don't judge.
Really?
But I like it.
That's what you're gonna start the stream with.
Can you guys hear me okay?
I can't.
I think you guys are coming in a little loud for me. Is that something I can adjust?
You can adjust your headphone volume here.
Okay.
Are you? Which one are you? Do you know? I can't.
The second. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yours is way turned up. I think I was turning it up, trying to turn up Ben's last week.
Oh yeah.
Is that a little better?
You can go even more so.
Okay.
How do I sound to everybody?
That's good.
You sound good to me.
Thank you.
I sound soft to myself. You guys
You're
sound
just
normal.
self-aware about it now.
That's probably true. All right, just leave it.
My dad said.
My dad said. Nick's dad said I'm soft.
My dad could beat up your dad.
It's playing a commercial.
It is. There it goes.
Yeah, we actually, since we're not members only, we're monetized for this video.
Ah.
Nice.
Yeah, so everyone listening right now, you are contributing to the tribe right now.
We appreciate you.
But wait. We don't get any of that money, do we?
Yeah.
We do?
Yeah.
Whew. I almost got fired for a second. We were going to have to make budget cuts.
Depending on if people actually watch it.
Okay. Well, that's fun.
That's the whole point of being monetized.
The money.
Well, it makes sense to me now.
But yeah, I mean, we get money from our members, so I don't feel the need to
I knew about
add
that.
ads to those ones. But we can have ads on YouTube videos.
Okay. How about that? Okay.
What a weird world we live in.
I know. It is strange. I'm just noticing that actually my beer is almost gone. So before we get into this, I'm going to make a run downstairs. I'm just guessing you guys prefer My Kiss over... There's actually All Day in there,
All
too.
day is good for me.
There's All Day, there's 200, there's My Kiss, and then there's Pumpkin Spice Ale from New Holland. Quite the tasty treat. Quite the seasonal treat.
It would be
New
awesome
Holland is not a sponsor.
to have like
Yet.
yeah, to have local brewery placements.
That's
That'd be sweet.
going to be...
so cool.
Yes.
We'd never talk about fish again. It's all beer.
Just turn it into a craft beer podcast. I'm sure people would love it. Nobody's gotten sick of the craft beer thing yet.
No, it's true. Okay, I'll be right back.
Okay. Then we'll get going.
I'll take a backhoe of some sort. Just a backhoe of some sort. Maybe besides the pumpkin one. Yeah, maybe not that one either. Yeah. Thank you. Deal.
Deal. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Incoming deal. I get a beer and you get nothing.
Who all
No,
wants...
you did the work for this one, so you can't even say that.
Yeah, it wasn't much. It wasn't much.
More than the rest of us.
Boo, skip the birthday party.
I can't see the live chat right now.
No, I thought I put it on.
Yeah, yeah. Do you
Kevin?
work on Thursdays?
Yeah, I do.
You gonna stick around for my clam talk?
I wondered if that was you.
It is.
It didn't mention you. Yeah, I figured that was you.
It was me.
Lighting in here, especially
maybe.
because
You
we're
got any
lit from
zingers?
behind.
I got plenty.
Can I have one? One clam related zinger.
One clam-related zinger right off the top of my head.
One family-friendly clam-related singer.
I don't got those.
Never mind.
I've never gotten over like Nick being like the first time I walked in. He's like, so anyway, so I had to label our podcast as explicit because you won't stop.
Well, my
Our numbers went down.
Yeah.
Oh.
my criteria for what makes an episode explicit is apparently different than that one guy who emailed me. Sorry.
I'd be curious to see what day we were labeled explicit and see if there's a notable change in numbers.
Oh yeah.
Either direction.
I mean, if it was in, when did you do that?
I don't know. I could probably find it.
Like, do they? I guess it's podcast, so it's not really like there is no them for podcasts. But do they say what explicit should be? Like, what is the bar? Do they list the words that you can say?
January of this year, so that's actually a pretty good milestone for us to look back at.
Yeah, it's
Stats.
probably unrelated then.
Charles is crunching the numbers in his head.
I'd like to consider us kid friendly, but I can't imagine kids sitting through this. Maybe I shouldn't say that on the live stream. I don't know. I don't know what kind of podcast kids listen to.
Ooh.
That was a nice one.
Probably something about
Roblox.
I was gonna say Legos, but good job.
I know what the kids are into.
Yeah.
Well, they'll be like, Roblox was so 5 years ago.
Yeah.
What
There's
was
a.
Roadblocks?
Roblox.
I don't even know what that is.
What is it like? Do you know what Minecraft is?
Sorta.
It's like, I think, the new Minecraft.
Yeah,
Although
but like you can make different games in the game.
Yeah, and you can sell them or something. Like you can
Yeah,
monetize it.
there's microtransactions.
Nice. That's what the
Mm.
kids need. The kids need more
They want-
microtransactions.
What kids really need is gambling.
yeah.
Yes. That makes sense.
Ooh, we have our first question, and it's a big one.
Oh dear.
Favorite fish to keep and why?
None of them.
That's a big one.
Uh,
Are we gonna just do that now
yeah, why not?
before we actually record? I think that's kind of fun. Then it's just for the live stream.
Yeah.
For Mr. Joker.
I'm gonna say I got my answer. I'm gonna say Percula clownfish because I've had a pair for over a year now, and they are the most fun I've had in a long time.
Paraclowns is a really
They're
solid
just-
entry for that.
I'm so ecstatic about them that I'm like, these other clownfish species I've been thinking about for years. I'm gonna do that now.
I would, if I'm gonna be like this general about it, because like I could break this down in any category.
Yeah.
I just say any pair of bonded cichlids.
Mm.
That's a good choice.
That's solid.
I think clownfish give me like that, but like they're much more into me. Like
Yeah, and I don't want my fish to be into me. Like
Yeah.
I want them to ignore me.
my perks as of like 2 weeks ago, they will now let me like hand feed them.
Oh,
That was fun.
I think I'm gonna just kind of take a page out of your playbook, and I'm gonna say my Clark's clowns that I have right now. And
Fair.
why are they my favorite? Because they're based on a photograph I took scuba diving in Thailand of a pair of Clark's clowns in a carpet anemone, and so I have the carpet anemone and the Clark's clowns here, and that reminds me of Thailand every time I look at
Jay says, "Is there any chance that it's due to the explicit language around fish breeding?"
them.
well, it's a self-report, so
Yeah.
it might have something to do with it.
Maybe it's because we were doing the live bear episode and kept talking about thingy dingies.
Perhaps so.
Do they bleep thingy dingy if you say it on TV?
If only.
What about you, Nick? Favorite fish to keep and why?
My favorite is one I have right now, and it's a dwarf pike cichlid.
I knew it.
Because sorry, I'm predictable, but because I like big predatory fish, but I know my limits, and I'm not going to be that guy.
Yeah, you want the micro version of that.
Yeah, exactly.
I love how you're like, I'm predictable. I'm like, yeah, we're all predictable to each other. We've all known. The minimum anyone at this table has known anyone is 4 years.
Like if you were to really add up the time that the four of us have spent together, it would be ridiculous.
Ben and I once figured out that there was a good like 2 or 3 years where we spent more time with each other than either of us did with our wives.
Mm-hmm. Kind of how that goes. Yep.
Those
Alrighty.
COVID years, man.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
I'm feeling ready.
I'm feeling ready.
hyped. I'm really excited about
this
this.
will be a fun one. All right. Welcome to the latest Watercolors Aquarium Gallery podcast, brought to you from the Aquarium Rush Studios in downtown Grand Rapids, Michigan. My name is Ben,
I'm Amy.
And I'm Charles.
and sitting in today because of this special episode, a very special episode, we've got Nick on the mic.
Woo! Thanks for having me.
How's it going today, Nick?
Good.
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 This is my favorite kind of episode.
It's going to be a fun one. This
The
is
one
our...
where you're in charge.
This is our classic listener question episode. So how good is this episode going to be? It all depends on you.
That's right. We relinquish responsibility.
That's right. I do that a lot.
You know what is responsible though?
Supporting watercolors.shop.
Thank you.
Please head over there to see if there's anything that we can help you with. We've got live plants. We've got aquarium supplies. We have some live fish, but we're taking special orders. and we have aquarium merch designed by Ben and myself.
Yeah.
Lots of really cool stuff, and it's a great way to support the show. The other great way to support the show would be to join our YouTube membership. So $4.99 a month gets you access to live streams of our recording sessions, where we might go into a little more depth or be able to answer questions. It's a really great group to be a part of, and we really appreciate those of you who do join us every week.
You also get to see our anxiety moments where we're like, oh, quick, Google it.
Don't forget our pre and post show silly banter that does seem to happen on a pretty regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting a little,
does have some good puns from time to time.
That's funny. You're getting a little taste of that right now with this streaming out to everybody who wants to watch it, which I think is pretty fun, and I think it's a good way to do it.
Yeah, so you get a little taste today, but we'd like to have you every week.
Absolutely. Before we get into this, I do want to address a couple of things that came up over the week. So y'all know we're about information here and trying to get it right, but also we're really about the discussion, and to me, discussion has to be back and forth. So this week, just so happened, we had 2 times where it came up where somebody acted as though or behaved as though they were going to call us out on getting something wrong, but didn't tell us what we got wrong and weren't willing to be part of the discussion. So I found that rather pointless. I mean, it's, sure, you were mad. I understand you were mad. One was a phone call. I guess this person specifically asked for me. I was not available at the time. And something about, you guys are spreading misinformation and I'm never setting this foot in the store again, and hung up. Okay, so you were mad. I understand. But if we don't know what you're mad about, we can't do anything about it. And if there's misinformation that we're spreading, please let us know. By the way, you better be ready to source it, because we do our best to be able to source everything. So you better be able to source it.
And please feel free to ask for our sources too, although
Absolutely.
we do usually try to get them into the descriptions whenever we can.
Absolutely. The other one was related to our, we talked about the collection ban happening in Hawaii. And somebody said we got a whole bunch of stuff wrong on that episode. Even via email, they said that. And I reached out to that person saying, hey, what did we get wrong? Tell me what's right. Tell me your side of the story. Tell me the right side of the story. That was about a week ago, and I haven't heard anything since. So come on, man.
Yeah.
This is me calling you out a little bit. I would love to hear more sides to that story. There's a whole lot going on there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it.
That's such
I
an
would also
issue.
like-
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd also like to say that, like, whoever is, like, calling us out on the Hawaii thing should go back and look at previous episodes we've done on regulation and stuff, because each of us has a very different opinion than we had when we first started having these conversations like 2-3 years ago.
Right.
And in some cases, and I'm trying to be playful, I would argue that you and I are a little more polarized from each other than we were 3 years ago. And that's,
But in a completely
depends.
different way.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
I'd like to believe that it's been clear how our opinions have grown and changed throughout the podcast. But then it becomes a weird thing to have to defend an opinion you had 3 years ago.
That's true. Especially because I was probably drinking at the time. I got to try to remember what I was talking about.
Or mad about something,
Yeah. So anyway, to those people that did reach out a little frustrated or disagreeing on how we did something, this is genuine. I really appreciate you taking the time to reach out and talk about it. Please, let's make it a discussion. Let's talk about it. If you get insulting, if you get nasty, you get mean, I will hang up on you and I will delete your email. Sorry, that's just how that's going to go, right? However, if you have some things you want us to know more about, if you and you like show us that we were wrong, I will publicly state it. I will say, hey, guess what? We screwed up. I'm not opposed to doing
we
that.
did an entire podcast on things we got wrong. Like,
Yeah,
we're willing
absolutely.
to admit when we got something wrong.
Yeah. So again, thank you for reaching out. Let's have the discussion. We really appreciate the discussion.
Probably the best place to send questions, comments, concerns about the podcast is podcast@watercolorsaquariumgallery.com. That'll go directly to our podcast editor, and he'll be able to forward it to whoever needs to see it.
If you want to come directly to me, say, hey, this is for Ben.
Yeah, I got a bone to pick with him.
Yeah. Let me know.
I do get forwarded emails that are addressed to me.
Yeah.
And that's true for everyone at this table.
Yep.
But I always think it's funny because I don't technically work here anymore. So I'll open up my private email and it's like forwarded from watercolors. I'm like, this is either really good or really bad.
Yeah,
Click.
What do I need to take accountability for today?
Exactly.
Guess I better turn in my key.
Most of the time, I will say, most of the time I've gotten criticism, it's been fairly informative, or it's at least intriguing.
Yeah, for
We're
sure.
like,
Some of my favorite people who send emails are our biggest critics.
yeah, like
for sure.
I'm not going to give details, but I got one a few months ago where I was like, I don't agree with your opinion at all, but you're very clearly informed.
I like that. Yeah, I like that.
All right.
Yep.
Well, we got a good one from the chat to get started with, and then we're going to send it over to Nick, maybe. Are we
All
ready?
right, sure. Yeah.
Cool.
What you got?
From the chat, we're going to go each one of our personal minimum tank size for a betta.
Oh.
I say 5. Who wants to go next?
The betta police are going to call me out on this one.
I know, right?
I know, right? I say 1. And I'll defend that one, by the way.
Same.
I'd say 5 as well.
There you go.
Should I go into why?
But none of us said 10.
No.
So I encourage you to go into why, because I've actually received emails, and I think we've maybe spoken about these emails, about why the argument I think you're going to use
I've got 2.
doesn't hold up.
Sure, I've got 2.
Okay.
2. First, and we'll try to get a link in the description for this video. Help me remember to do that, Nick. There's a wild collection video where they're collecting bettas in the wild in Thailand. And they're going through a short palm forest. And if you think of the base of a palm tree, right, where all the fronds come out, there's actually a vessel of water there, right? And this video is out, they're collecting wild bettas, and they're pulling wild bettas out of that vessel. There's no way there's a full gallon of water in that vessel. And they're pulling pairs, and they're pulling multiple bettas out of that. So there's argument number 1. Argument number 2, one of my long-term, old-time fish friends in 1994, yes, it's going back a long ways,
That's when I was born.
right. He was named by Freshwater and Marine Aquarium magazine, which was one of the top magazines back in the time when magazines were really a thing. He was named the best betta breeder in the world. He raised his bettas in half-gallon drum bowls. He did significant water changes, and they were super healthy. But he did it in half-gallon drum bowls. I think that's a little bit tight. Going up to gallon, I think, is just fine. If you look at the natural habitat of bettas, they're often found in about 2 inches of water in an area that's probably less than a gallon as far as their territory is concerned. So there's my...
So the argument that I hear against that, this isn't my opinion, but we've actually specifically gotten this email before, is that does this same rule apply to domestic bettas because they are removed from
I've never heard
wild
that
bettas?
one.
I have heard this argument.
If anything, it's a smaller space.
I was about to say,
Significant.
I have a strong opinion on that, and that's a stupid argument, because if it's domesticated, look at any domesticated animal. Their space needs are smaller than what they came from.
Right.
I mean, we've basically crippled them.
Yeah,
So
they can't swim. I've seen the comment before.
There's a really cool video out there doing water changes on betta setups.
Yeah.
And they're raising the bettas up in Coca-Cola bottles.
Yeah.
Right? And they've got this amazing grid of 25 Coca-Cola bottles by 50 Coca-Cola bottles. And they've got this hose thing that's got spray bars on it so they can do water changes on it, and they just overflow them, right? And the guy's walking across the top of these Coca-Cola bottles, just spraying them.
The one other point I'll provide, is what's the difference between raising a fish in a volume that size or keeping a fish long term in a volume that size?
I think there's some validity to that. Sure. The betta breeder, he was doing the same thing with his showfish, in the same size,
and he's world class.
He's world class.
the argument that I see on this issue that I kind of get the perspective of is we're not always looking to do the minimum a fish can take.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
But when people say minimum tank size, what are they really talking about? Is that the minimum you can keep something healthy in, as in manage waste? In that case, you could do it in a quart.
Yes.
Is it what will the fish not be stressed by? And that's such a complicated question to answer.
True.
How do you know if a fish is happy? I think a fish can be happier in a 1-gallon bowl that's well decorated with lots of plants than they could be in an empty 10-gallon.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, fully.
I'm going to go back to a point you had because we glossed right past it, and it was a really good point. Where when we're talking about the space requirements of domesticated bettas, we base our, and I'm pointing at me and Ben, he and I base a lot of our opinion on what bettas' care requirements are on wild fish. And the argument on a base level that like domesticated bettas have different needs because they're domesticated, that's logical. But going to this step and saying that like they need more space than their wild counterpart is a big cognitive leap without any backup, particularly because domesticated bettas, they're raised in environments like the most common way is in like 750 milliliter whiskey jars. That is the most common way they do it on farms in Thailand. So
that's what it was, not Coke bottles.
Yeah.
It was whiskey
Yeah.
jars.
Harder to walk on a Coke bottle.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, yeah, because it
But
would be like the
they're
2
all
liters. Yeah.
Stuck together.
and the long fins and they don't move as well, so like they can't utilize space as well as a wild betta can. They're not as maneuverable, they're not as fast, and they're not as athletic.
This is an old
We could do
argument
this one
that
for an
has
hour.
come
Oh,
up
yeah.
a lot on
And I
our
think we're
podcast
due
already.
another domestic betta episode.
We've got it in the
We've got
works.
some good
So yeah,
ideas
we'll
for
address
that.
that in a lot more detail. But yeah, the simple answer to that is a lot smaller than the internet police seem to think. How's
But we didn't talk about why Amy says 5, and I think you should explain that because it's a really good argument.
I mean, for me, I just think it's more fun.
that?
Like,
That's
I
great,
like
yeah.
the fish having more space to swim around. I can have a lot more fun in a 5-gallon tank. And for me, like the trying to keep a tank clean enough for a betta is kind of like a moot point. It's really easy to do. So 5 gallons is the tank I like. It's as simple as that.
Fair, solid.
I for a long time, like I was keeping my breeder males in 2.5-gallon tanks. Like that's just a size that worked for what I was
Yeah.
doing at the time.
And I
Yeah.
think it would have been more fun in a 5.
I don't disagree with
Yeah.
that. But I wasn't being pretty. I was being practical.
All right. Mandarin Gobi, thank you for joining us. I think we're going to get back to this question if we have time.
'Kay.
But I think we should probably get started on it
Yep.
next.
Let's do it, Nick.
Cool. All right, ready to tackle the list?
You better hit out of the park with the first one.
All right. First one is from somebody I really like. He's been a long-time listener. Christopher A.
Oh, yeah. Love that guy.
Um,
Talk about our biggest critic.
yeah. All right. So I thought this was a good question. What freshwater fish would naturally really enjoy very bright light? An aquarium with lighting almost as intense as saltwater.
Antheus.
He's
Other way
saying
around.
freshwater.
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 In freshwater.
Probably any pseudomugo. They're going to hang out
Ooh.
up at the top of really shallow rivers.
Yeah, but they've got the blue eyes that are visible in the
true.
tannins.
But not all of them come from stained water.
Can you think
Right.
of any environments that are both shallow and like super close to the equator?
Yeah, the clear water ecosystems in the Amazon River system are gonna. There's some places where that river is gonna be really shallow and super clear water. Three different described water parameters of the Amazon River system: the black water, clear water, and what's the other one? It's the mud. It's the brown water.
The murky.
The murky.
I don't know what.
Yeah, I can't remember what the distinction of that one
'Cause
is.
It's not white water. It's
Is
like
it
something else.
turbid?
Yeah.
No.
It might be
Oh.
turbid
I mean, that's the technical term. but
Right.
or
it's not-
murky,
yeah.
Yeah.
Silty.
silty. But anything from that clear water environment, you're gonna get that. When I was in Belize, it was a wide riverbed, shallow water, and there were Xiphophorus species in very clear, very shallow water. So I think maybe the answer to that is going to be lots of them. Anything that's got a broad range is going to have a high likelihood of being able to handle really bright conditions. Some of the rivers I was, you know what? I'm going to just expand it even further. If it's big water, they can handle bright conditions if it's clear.
Yeah,
Oh.
the example that's popping up in my head is Cyprichromis, because that's an open
Mm.
water.
Yeah. That'll
Right.
Yeah,
do
that's
it.
a great one.
Yeah.
That's a great one. I think there's lots and lots and lots of them.
And even the ones that aren't can probably adapt.
Yeah. Maybe some guidelines, right? If they're shiny, they probably like bright light.
Oh, like rosy barbs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
If they have bright iridescent eyes, they probably don't.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
the blue eyes.
Honestly, I think if you had like strong, now there are exceptions, but I feel like if you have strong blue iridescence like licorice grimies, cardinal
Yeah.
tetras, probably not.
Probably not. Right.
If you look like you try to look like sticks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The less
maybe not.
detail you have on your body, probably the brighter light you can take.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
I feel like there is a perfect example of an answer to that question that we might need to think on a little more.
I just think it's too broad. I think that there's
What?
lots.
I think specifically he's saying what fish would naturally enjoy very bright light. That makes me think not what fish would adapt to it, but
Well, no, and
environments
what,
that
what
have
I'm
that.
saying is
Yeah.
that those fish that are really shiny are adapted to it,
okay.
right? Or naturally, that's the conditions that they're going to be in.
Sure.
Shiny without relying on iridescence.
Yeah, I'm using a saltwater fish as an example, but the bonefish is often cited as the fish with the best mirrored body, and that mirrored body is designed to reflect the bright light and the bottom, so that it looks like it's almost like an invisibility cloak.
Mm-hmm.
Any fish that's got that bright silvery color to it is going to be designed is going to have that for that same purpose, most likely. So
And
bright silvery fish, probably.
William makes a good point that our aquarium lights generally don't even nearly approach the intensity of sunlight.
Right, absolutely true.
Yeah. What we're trying to get at here is we're trying to pick out examples of fish that come from areas that don't have a canopy above their habitat.
Yeah.
That's what we're
Sure.
getting at.
But
Yeah.
really, our environment's already dimmer than anything that would be in full sun.
Yeah.
Generally.
Cool. Want to move on?
Yes, I like it.
Question from Jackson S. Says, I recently moved to a new city. I've been trying to find an LFS to frequent. I feel like it's been my experience that building a relationship with an LFS is an important part of the hobby for me. So I took a day to check out all the stores in my city. I found they were all very niche, but none of them were my niche. There's a big cichlid store, a reef store, a Petco type store. For reference, none of these stores sold a tank that was less than 20 gallons, and I specifically keep nano tanks and nano fish. Is it appropriate to talk to a store about ordering things outside of their niche? Or should I suck it up and just get a Dovey eye?
I think it's always appropriate. So I operate. I'm jumping right in on this one. Sorry, guys. I operate under the principle that the answer is always no unless you ask, and so it's like it doesn't hurt to ask. But just like in any relationship, you have to accept the answer on the other end.
True.
Whether or not you like
That
it.
answer might tell you a lot
Yes.
more than you would find otherwise.
Yes.
Though, too.
Yeah.
So like if they're like, no, we won't. Don't get mad. Just walk out.
Yeah. Say, hey, I appreciate what you guys do, and walk out.
Yeah. Thank you for.
So is it a cichlid store, a reef store?
And he
And a
says a
Petco
step
like-
up from a Petco type store. So
honestly,
take that as you will.
I almost just flat out blurted out the one around here I thought that would compare.
If you live in the area, go ahead and take a guess.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. I think that cichlids, if you're doing nano freshwater fish, that cichlid store might be your best bet to start off with first, because they're
Yeah.
probably, if they're that kind of niche in this market, they're looking for it.
Right.
Yeah, they're selling what they like,
Yes.
Yeah.
so they can probably get other stuff too.
Yeah.
If the reef store also does some freshwater, then I would say the reef store could be a really good option because they're used to buying specialty things.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the stuff for reef aquariums has to come from specialty wholesalers, whereas a lot of the stuff for the basic freshwater stuff we can get from our big wholesaler, which, by the way, that happens to be the same wholesaler that most of the big box store uses. So if they're carrying brands like Aqueon and Marineland and those kinds of places, they're going through a big box wholesaler. Reef stores can't necessarily do that.
Yeah, ask questions about quarantine first.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the fish they currently have first. If those fish aren't healthy, the fish you order won't be healthy either.
Yes.
True.
I'm gonna interrupt. Thank you, William. He just gifted 5 memberships.
Thank you.
Wow.
Super
That's
cool.
amazing.
Thank you, dude.
Incredible.
So that had to be addressed.
That's
Yeah.
Wow, William, that's fantastic.
I look at the screen and suddenly it's like ping, 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 and it's like William and the names of the 5 people he gifted to.
I'm
Thanks, William.
William, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. I appreciate that tremendously. I'm a little blown away by it.
Yeah.
So, wow.
Generous.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, ready?
We're gonna send him something, right?
Oh, By the way, I
Might
was supposed to
even have his
mention
info
this.
somewhere.
Okay.
I was meant to mention this in the beginning, but last time we did this, we picked our favorite question and sent
Oh
something.
yeah, let's do
yes.
that again
Yep,
for
I agree.
sure.
For
I
sure.
think
Keep that
it
in
was
mind.
a T-shirt last time.
Yeah,
We
keep
could
that
probably
in
do another
mind, and we'd
t-shirt.
like to send
Mhm.
something out. Cool.
Well, that means we got to remember to keep track of our favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
That was a pretty good question.
yeah.
That was.
The sunlight one was kind of interesting.
Mhm.
All right, ready?
Yes.
Next is from Ian K. Says, I'd love to hear an episode about building micro-invertebrate diversity, in freshwater aquariums. I know
Ooh.
Amy has talked about it, and I've heard some cool stuff from Phillips Fish Works.
People keep too many fish in fresh water.
Yeah.
You don't get to see it?
Yeah.
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 So, okay, but let's break the question down, right?
Right.
Building the diversity, how do we do it?
Leaf.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and the way that I would do it, if I wanted an extremely biodiverse freshwater ecosystem, I would go right along with what Amy said, and I would set it up with leaves, live plants, collect some stuff, and put no fish in it for like 3 months.
Which is how a lot of people start their saltwater tanks. That's
Yeah.
a big reason they can do that.
And then have some things like, I don't know, some volcanic rock in there where they've got
Mhm.
the porosity, and some
As much junk
Stuff.
as possible.
yes, some stuff.
Yeah.
And then add fish, knowing that they are going to have a dramatic impact on the biodiversity of your little ecosystem you've just created. But it's amazing to me, like, okay, so every once in a while it does happen here where one of our tanks somehow ick or something gets through, and we have to leave that tank fallow for 4 weeks to make sure that we have the ick out of the tank before we can put fish in the tank. And by about 3 weeks, when we look in that tank, it's amazing how many
Full
little
of
critters
bugs.
are trucking around in that tank.
Like, you remember when we had a tank we had to leave empty, but we left full of good, healthy plants, and that whole tank just filled up with, like, those little paramecium wormy
Yeah.
things that just
Yes.
float in the water column?
Yep.
We added
was
a
cool.
group of 6 white clouds, and they were all gone the next day.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
that
yeah.
was like a density of like 1 worm every quarter inch. Like, it
Right.
was so much food. And then the next day, we had very fat white clouds.
I actually maintain 3 quart jars on one of my bookshelves where I'm just throwing in leaves to like get biodiversity, and I just like pull. It's like a sourdough starter. I'll pull leaves out once in a
Yeah.
while and put in new leaves.
Hmm.
Not all the leaves, just some of them.
And pretty much any little jar we set up that we don't put fish in, that we put plants in, ends up with a little bit of a Daphnia outbreak from time to time.
That's true.
That's cool.
Yep, I love that. It's a great question.
Cool. I got a couple next from Noah H.
'Kay.
And he says, I desperately want to be a part of a local aquarium club. However, the closest one I can find is 3 hours from me. Any recommendations for how to connect with other fish keepers in my area? And how difficult is it to start a new club, given that there are at least a handful of people in the area that would join?
Okay.
Has anybody here ever started a club or kind of been in on the startup of a club?
I've only
Marine
started
Club is really new.
3 of them. So yes, it is not difficult at all to start an aquarium club. The way to start it is if you've got some people that are interested, hey, let's start getting together the 3rd Tuesday of every month and call ourselves a club. Right.
And everybody bring a 6-pack.
Yeah, or whatever you want that theme to be, bring a 6-pack or bring some pop or bring some hot dogs. Whatever it is you want that theme to be, like say we're going to get together, and you just start getting together. Then once you've got, like, if you've got 4 or 5 of you that have been together 2 months in a row, then you say, hey, we should be the board. Once you've got that, then start going to the local stores if you've got a couple around and talk to them and say, hey, we're starting an aquarium club. Would you be interested in helping us? All we want to do is put a sign up in your store that we're doing it.
How many members would you say that West Michigan Marine Club had when they first came to us?
5.
And
now
that-
there's 30.
Yeah. And
Less than 2 years.
we were happy to see them with 5 members.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
they're not going to turn you away if
Right.
they're
I
a
think-
good LFS.
Wasn't their original plan, if you said no to the meeting here, was we're just going to meet at the bar?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah. So it's not hard. You just start at grassroots. You get some people together that are interested, and then those people can talk to those people, and their people can talk to their people, and it can spread organically like that. If you can get one of the stores involved, man, that's going to make a huge difference. If one of the stores, I'll throw this out there too. If one of the stores is having a little bit of a, I don't know, feel free to give them my information and have them shoot me an email. And I will be happy to talk to a fellow store owner and talk about what the advantage is as one store owner to another would be. There's this mentality out there with some store owners that clubs are competition for stores. And from a certain point of view, there's some truth to it. And if, as store owners, we say, okay, yes, the clubs are going to compete with us. The clubs have auctions. Sometimes they sell fish. I shouldn't say sometimes. They often
People
sell
can
lots
get
of
free
fish.
plans at a club meeting.
Yes, often.
But they
However,
need tanks to put them in.
Right. And where else, as a store owner, can I find a more concentrated group of dedicated hobbyists to
Right?
advertise to?
I hate that mentality.
I know.
Well,
it's ridiculous.
Like I show up at a club and give a talk, and I have 20 conversations with 20 different people who have 20 plus tanks, and I'm like, God, I want to get this dude in my store.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Exactly. Because they're always willing to set up another tank if you've got the right thing for
Yes.
them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that's the grassroots way to start it. If you need more information on that or more help, shoot us an email. I wonder if somebody posted this question in our listener page today. I wonder if this is the same person. And I did respond to that. If you're from Ashland, Wisconsin, then that. I did respond a little bit to that. You're in a little bit of a tough spot because you're in a small town in the middle of nowhere, and the closest club I found for you was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which happens to be 3 hours away. So there's a whole lot of coincidences here that makes me think this is probably the same person.
Maybe.
Yeah. The Ashland had a marine club for a while. They don't anymore. It's now defunct. And then you've got Green Bay has one, Madison has them, Milwaukee has them, but that's a hefty drive from Ashland. Ashland's right up on Lake Superior, or near Lake Superior, but still an hour from Duluth.
Find some people, get together, keep doing it.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, grassroots it. You bet.
Cool.
That's a great question. I love it.
Yeah, the other one from Noah was, why aren't U.S. native fish more popular? I know there are exceptions for this, but it seems like there are a ton of great U.S. natives that would make cool aquarium inhabitants. If you were to build a tank stocked with U.S. natives to show off their potential, how would you stock it?
They're tricky to sell.
I'm really jaded when it comes to U.S. natives. There are some people out there that are big fans, and I get it. There's NANFA, the North American Native Fish Association. There's a whole national club, a national organization dedicated to keeping North American or native fish in your habitat. I'm just going to give my personal taste. I think they're boring compared to tropical fish.
Ooh.
I know it's unpopular. I've kept a lot of them, and to
There are a
me,
couple.
they're just not as fun. The rainbow darter is a fantastic exception to that. I love those fish. They're beautiful.
I
Yeah,
don't
pygmy sunfish is my exception of
Yeah.
that interests
Yeah.
me.
I don't personally think that tropical fish are prettier, but I will say that like I don't have a strong incentive to keep something that I can go outside and see.
Yeah, I can see that. That
You
makes
know what I
some
mean?
sense.
Because like I'm an outdoorsy guy. If I
Yeah.
can go out and see it, I'm gonna go out and see it.
Right.
For me, a lot of these tanks, they're these weird, far-flung places that I don't get to visit. Like that's
Yeah.
why I have fish from Cameroon, Gabon, Papua New Guinea. These are places that would be really hard, or in some cases, and not safe for me to visit.
All right, can I chime in on that point?
Yeah,
Yeah,
please
Because
do.
I think I'm the biggest
You're a
native
fan.
fish
Yeah.
fan at the table. The argument I'd make there is ask aquarists here if they even know what lives in the creek behind their house. And I feel like if we can't appreciate what lives in our own waters, why do we care about what's in?
I have made that argument multiple times on this
Yeah,
podcast.
I
I agree
agree.
with that.
I think
Yeah.
that's a great argument.
And
You're
the more we
right,
learn
but I
about our
still don't really
own
feel like it.
biodiversity,
Yes, I
then
think
maybe the more we'll care.
Yeah, I think my personal rant was like it was in response to like why are people in this other country behaving this way? I'm like, dude, if you don't know the regulation, what's going on in this creek behind you, shut up.
Right.
Like,
And I
Yeah.
think
The reality is the biodiversity in the tropics is just flat out higher.
it
It
is. That's
Yep.
true. That's true.
Yeah.
But there are some awesome behaviors from some of our native fish All of the shiners, by the way, do some really cool kind of shoaling behavior, better shoaling or tight knit behavior than we get out of a lot of the fish we sell as shoaling fish or schooling fish even.
I don't disagree with any of that. I can still walk out and watch it, and I
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I don't think people see what's under the surface in the creeks around us.
Get yourself some good polarized sunglasses.
Get
or
in
a
the
mask and
water.
snorkel.
Go,
I mean,
or even that.
that's
even
how I
that.
fell in love with fish, was
Or-
sticking my face in the water.
And just
Yeah.
go touch some grass, dude.
Yeah.
What it comes down to me is if somebody comes and says I want to keep native fish, the only thing I can tell them is great, go get some. Go
Right.
find
True.
them, go catch
Yeah.
them. Like
True.
there's nobody producing native fish to the extent that we'd be able to buy them from a wholesaler.
That's
Right.
the only way to get them.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
unless you're asking us to go catch them for you,
It's
I
not
can't
legal
help
for us
you.
to do that.
Yeah,
Right.
we can't do that.
You-
In a lot of places, an individual can though, just to keep them for themselves.
State by state regulations
Right.
are
Yes.
very specific.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes,
very
so
specific.
check your regulations if you plan to do this.
But
You either have
We
to
definitely can't.
No.
yes, do it yourself, or you have to know a calder, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um,
But
Don't stick a net in a trout stream.
True.
If our list had pygmy sunfish on it, we would have them in stock.
True.
At all times.
True.
But it doesn't, and it probably won't.
Well, the tank I would stock, off a recommendation of Calder, would be blue nose shiners, and I'd probably do like a 40 breeder with a big old gang of them.
I would do a 20 long with tom toms and mud minnows.
That's fun.
But a lot of them
The
are
most
really
brown
hard to
fish
breed
that
too.
exist.
Like they need those seasonal changes for
Right.
their breeding strategies, so they're not as enticing on
Yeah.
that grounds either.
Some of the darters have some really, really cool behaviors, and they would be fun to watch.
A lot of the darters and a fair amount of the shiners have like a small window where they look like the Google Images shows they look, and the
Yeah.
rest of the year they're pretty plain.
The
And I think
shiners that
that's
we've
a
had
perk.
do look pretty good pretty much all the time.
Yeah,
They're not a Michigan native, though.
Yeah.
but it's
They're in North America.
Yeah.
true.
Yep.
But yeah, with our seasonality, I bet you we get species that have like short windows of that really prime
Yeah.
color. Yeah.
Anyway, if you want us to keep native fish, breed them and bring them to us.
Then we still can't sell them.
We can't sell
No.
any native fish. I thought it was just we couldn't collect them for sale.
So I believe you need a bait license to sell them as a store, even for ornamental purposes.
Interesting.
And I believe you need in Michigan, and this is do your own research because this is just what I thought I had heard. I believe you need a fishing license to collect them,
You
even
do.
if even if
You
they're
do.
not sport fish.
Yeah, you do.
And I think to sell them, it's just a bait license as a bait shop. So
Yep.
which is pretty fascinating.
I would do, to answer this question, I would do Okie Finokis.
Those are cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
I've actually gone out of my way to specific regions of the country to try and see, and I'm blanking on the genus name. I've seen a couple members of this genus in the wild.
Lessoma.
That's-
No.
yeah, well-
That is a different fish, but it's something close to that.
Yeah,
hmm
I'm blanking.
Yeah,
There's
I
some native
don't have
Michigan
it.
killifish that would be fun to play with for a little while, too.
Mhm.
So they're not so boring after all, huh?
Well, they're not Epiplatus annulatus.
Yeah, yeah. Not a
Have you
Circular
seen the other
clownfish.
killifish?
Yeah.
All right, here are some
That
questions.
might be the question that makes people the maddest.
Maybe.
Probably true.
And I would love to do a native fish episode. So
That's why I very specifically said my taste. Right? Some people don't like punk rock, too. That's my taste.
some people don't like mint chocolate chip ice cream.
Well, they're just wrong. if they
Oh my
do
God.
this in chocolate chip ice cream. That's just silly.
You went
Brush your
right
teeth.
for it, Nick.
Brush your teeth and eat a Hershey bar. You get the same effect.
Ben's buttons are lit up. They're really easy to press. All right. Next, we have some questions from Simon B. This might be a Charles question.
Oh,
All right.
God.
Can you explain what an inbred lab strain is? What are the benefits or disadvantages of working with an inbred line over the regular fish we keep at home?
Yeah. Okay.
He's putting his hair up for this.
Do you need a ponytail holder?
Yeah. No, that's actually a really good question. So, when you say an inbred lab strain, the terminology that laboratory people would say is homozygous inbred line, and what there's a actual definition for this, and it's if you've done 20 generations of full sibling in crossing or equivalent.
Okay.
And the advantage of
Equivalent.
yeah, so like 40 generations of half sibling incrossing. That would give you the same amount of inbreeding,
Sure.
I see.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It doesn't seem like that math should math, but I believe you.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So, so what are the advantages here? So a lot of research, and you're asking a prickly question because if you haven't caught on to the podcast, I tend to have a counter opinion to whatever the paradigm is, just because I'm that kind of person. The paradigm right now in research is that homozygous inbred lines are the ideal because they are as close to genetically identical as you can get. And so that means that any variation you're getting, theoretically, is just because you're screwing around with them. It's not because they're
Okay.
genetically different from each other. It's not because of XYZ. I don't agree with that, though.
Essentially, the idea of that is you know exactly what you have.
Yes.
Yep.
Now, I don't agree with that, though, because there are problems with inbreeding. So if you've properly made a homozygous inbred line, you should have selected out all the deleterious alleles. Should have. And that's great. There's still drawbacks. My big problem with it, though, has nothing to do with that. It's that there's actually a big problem with translating a lot of laboratory studies, specifically mouse studies, to human studies, because homozygous inbred strains don't represent populations. So like when you figure out this medication works in this specific setting, a lot of the time we're finding out, turns out it doesn't work in a general population, only works in a subset of the population. And so like a lot of research, it's called a WIC line. So wild Indian karyotype. There's actually a specific strain of laboratory zebrafish that exists just to do pharmacological studies, just because they're trying. It's a strain that's meant to replicate and mimic the genetic diversity of a human population.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet.
And so those are the advantages, those are the disadvantages. That's why you would do one or the other. If you're trying to do something like figure out how a specific protein works in a specific function, inbred line would be great. If you're trying to figure out what medication works, not so great.
Well, medication works for everybody.
Yeah, or enough people to be worthwhile investing in.
Right.
That's a great question.
I'm glad we have Charles here.
Yeah.
Also from Simon B. Say, I love the look of rainbow shark. Some people say that red-tail sharks and rainbow sharks are the same fish with different colors. Others say that one is more aggressive than the other. What is our opinion or experience?
A rainbow shark is a different
The
species.
different
Yeah.
species.
Mhm.
For sure.
Whether it's the black one
I don't
or the
even-
white one.
I don't even think they're in the same genus. Can you
No.
look that up?
They don't really look that much alike if you look
No.
at them
they,
side by
they
side.
have a vague, like,
They're just both called sharks for no
yeah,
good
they have a
reason.
vague loachy look, and that's about it.
Well, they are vaguely loachy.
Fun little side note: a red-tailed shark was my first favorite fish.
Mm-mm.
Good, respectable
Yeah.
favorite.
Like when
fish.
I was 7.
Only they weren't such jerks.
Right. And I would say a red-tailed shark is slightly more aggressive than a rainbow shark, but only slightly.
That big one we have downstairs right now.
Well, it's 5 inches long.
I
Yeah,
know, but that's the
thing,
thing,
though,
they
is
should
that
all
red-tailed sharks
eventually get
much
there.
bigger than the rainbows.
Red tails get big. Oh, they do, don't they?
Like-
They get
They
like
do.
8 inches.
I added him to a 75 gallon that has a full grown electric blue Akara in it, and within 2 hours, he was not leaving that Akara alone. Why would he even care about that fish?
Right.
Shouldn't.
Right.
Oh. Otherwise, I might have been tempted to take him home because
Right.
they're just
They're cool.
they're adorable.
They're cool.
I
They're
will
cool.
say, I think rainbow sharks fit in more tank, just because they're smaller
Mhm.
and they're calmer. I shouldn't say calmer. Their ability to do damage is less because they're smaller.
Yeah.
I think red-tailed sharks look cooler.
I do too. Yeah.
It's a little bit more stark contrast. They're a little bit more like,
Beefier.
yeah, in a way that looks, and this is gonna sound really dumb, in a way that looks fishier to me.
Mm.
Okay.
Like red-tailed sharks look a little bit more like if you drew you had a 5-year-old draw a fish.
The profile, like
Yeah.
when they have a very fish. They're very fish-shaped fish.
Yeah.
Yes,
I agree.
Same genus, by the way.
same genus.
Oh,
Yeah, I thought
really?
so.
Never
I did
mind.
not know that.
Yeah, and then there's a black one. There's a solid black one that's also in the same genus.
I didn't know. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it's like rainbow shark around 4 or 5 inches, red tail shark around 6. Is that
6 or
kind of
7,
where?
I think.
Yeah.
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 choose the smaller one for better compatibility.
Don't
Is
put
that-
either with anything tiny. Don't put either with anything that can be bullied.
Right.
But
The red-tailed shark, I moved him in with a pair of breeding angelfish, and he has not eaten the eggs.
That's pretty good.
So
Yeah.
they're not like a demon in your tank. They just would like to chase things, and if things allow themselves to be chased, they're gonna do it.
I'm gonna stand on my soapbox about red-tailed sharks. Though.
Okay.
They
I was
don't
about to get on
exist
one.
in the wild.
Right.
They only exist in the world because people like them and we breed them in captivity. This is the poster child of what the aquarium hobby can do and should be doing more. This fish is extinct in the wild and has been for decades.
Right.
It only exists in the world because we like it.
Yep.
So every single person who has one of these properly maintained, you're a cool person.
Here's to you,
You're keeping-
properly maintained red-tailed shark person.
You are keeping this species alive.
Yep.
Through just market demand.
Just 'cause
By the way, they're
neat.
mean and they get big, but hey, we still
Yeah.
love them.
But through sheer market demand.
Yeah.
That's the only reason they're around.
But it's like the type of thing that I'd put one in every tank that could take it.
Yes.
Which is not very many.
Not very many, but if you got big fish,
Yeah.
you probably can take one.
Yeah.
One for Ben.
Okay.
Simon is from Belgium.
Oh,
Says
fun.
The best beer country in the world. He was wondering what your favorite Belgian beer is.
Oh.
You have one.
One that tastes like
it's
something.
called Dubbel, I believe is how you spell it, and I can't pronounce it correctly. But man, I do love me a good Belgian beer. I've tried to make Belgians, or Belgian styles. I'm a big one for saying, you can't make a Belgian beer in America. You can only make a Belgian beer in Belgium. You can make a Belgian style
Sure.
in America. And I've tried to make a Belgian style and realized that Belgian funk, I love that Belgian funk, and I need to leave that to the Belgians. So
Fair enough.
I think it's called Dubbel or Double or Dubbel.
Yeah, I found it. Yeah, it looks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Last one from Simon.
'Kay.
I think this is a fun idea. If the hosts here could host a podcast on any non-fish or aquarium-related topic, what would it be?
Beer.
Like with all three of us or
I
individually?
think individual. That's how I interpreted it.
For me, it'd be
is-
beer or fly fishing.
Yeah, if you ended up on a podcast with another
Yeah.
group of like-minded people, what would it be on? Charles sword fighting, perhaps?
Maybe. I actually love the idea of like a podcast on like analyzing stories, like how stories are told, how they evolve through time.
Oh, cool.
Like
yeah.
I've been diving into old Greek literature, and that's been very interesting.
I don't really have a lot of hobbies. I can talk about video games, but no one would probably be interested.
I think that's probably the most listened to topic that is
Not
out
the way
there.
I do it.
That's a fun
Uh,
question. I like it.
Yeah, I thought that was fun. I'd probably be like sport fishing as well.
Fly
I'm
fishing
not-
or fly tying.
I'm not hoity-toity enough to
Right.
do a fly fishing.
Someday you mature.
We all get there in time.
I catch big fish. I don't want to go out all day and catch 9-inch trout, Ben.
That's some pretty darn big trout.
Just kidding. I love trout.
Mhm.
Here we have one from Morgan J. Say, I've been listening to, reading, and watching anything about blackwater setups, mainly
Mm.
with labyrinth fish.
Yeah.
In the Bubble Nesting Bettas podcast, Ben and Charles hinted towards cohabitating licorice gouramis, chocolate gouramis, and bettas, maybe from the Cocina complex, in the same aquarium. This is something that I really want to try, but it leads me to a couple questions. Hypothetically, if you were to do this, what bettas would you recommend? And what would you stay away from? Also, what kind of setup would you recommend? I'm working with a 70-gallon aquarium in the
Excellent.
UK.
Put a dozen of
Um,
each. I don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of room to play with, and even paludarium styles or something similar.
I think a paludarium would be sweet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would.
I think that height doesn't matter. So if you go in paludarium and you just do it more shallow,
Yeah.
break up those territories would be awesome. The Christina complex I'd still hold to that.
I've seen, now you can argue whether it's in it, but I have seen multiple people cohabitating Paraspermines nagii and Betahendra.
Hendra was the one I was thinking
Yeah.
of that's outside the complex, or may or may not be
Yeah.
outside the complex.
And the trick there seems to be that you have like their territories are the same size. So like the
Yeah.
trick there seems to be enough space for multiple of either species, and you can have both.
Yeah, and it's 75. Oh,
Yeah.
if you
Can we
do
just
that,
say anything 2 inches or less?
yeah, I think
Like,
so.
is there any that
Well,
you
I think
couldn't?
I think I would stay away from Alba marginata and
Yeah.
what's the other?
Any of the mouth.
What are the
breeders.
two? Right, just because they have big mouths, and
Yeah.
big mouths means they have the potential to eat something bigger.
We've
Sure.
kept them in groups safely plenty of times.
Well, within their own kind.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
I think they
you
would
think
be.
they could eat a licorice gourami?
I think they would be too competitive for food. Your licorice gourami would
Mm.
never eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything
Yeah.
with that big a mouth is ready to go.
Yep.
So in a tank with
So if you're
chocolate
spot
gouramis,
feeding, maybe.
But chocolate gouramis are functionally like different niche almost.
I was gonna say in a tank with chocolate gouramis and licorice gouramis, what's your number one pick for a wild betta variety that would fit?
Brown arum because I like them the most.
Yeah,
Any
that's fair.
cochina.
You think so? Yeah.
Anything in that complex, they're all super similar, but brown arum's
Yeah.
the one I happen to like the most.
Anything in the cochina plus Hendra and Persephone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you're working with the chocolate gouramis, you want to make sure, since it's a species that gets significantly bigger, make sure that like whatever you're not putting in like baby licorice gouramis in with
Right.
them or something like that. You know,
Yep.
be mindful of mouth size. I would say the Valet, it's French, and I think that's how you would pronounce it. Valet gourami would
The
be my
Viant.
Viant. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think I don't. Sorry, I speak German.
Just skip half the letters in the middle and
I
then you're good.
can't.
I just call him Valiant.
Yeah.
That's what I say too.
Yeah.
That's the English
American.
translation of the word, so it
Okay.
works just as well.
Yep.
I think that would be my first choice because they seem a little bit calmer. They have a slightly smaller mouth. They don't get as big.
They're also really cool looking.
They're really cool.
I'd picture like kind of a dimly lit tank or maybe a spotlight effect on a tank with lots of clutter, leaf litter.
When people ask me about combining cichlids, I say make sure each one of them has their own rock to hide in.
Yes.
In this case, I'd say make sure each one of them has their own leaf to hide under.
Yes.
Sure.
And that's not hard.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Driftwood, leaf litter, lots of botanicals. Get that pH down to about 5.5.
Yeah.
Start
Yeah,
with
if
our
you had,
water.
like-
That'd be so fun.
So cool.
I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
You
We're
said-
really due a Blackwater Asian
Yeah.
Anabanted tank.
You
Yeah.
said he's from the UK.
Yeah.
You want a 3 centimeter thick leaf litter.
Yeah.
All right. More betta questions. I have more.
Sure.
Mm.
This is from Rod K. And he starts his email with,
Kimbo.
"What is with domestic bettas these days?"
What is with those domestic fetters these days? Sorry.
Said
The
I
Andy
first
Samberg response.
I first successfully bred bettas during the 6th grade in 1964.
Cool.
Awesome.
In 1999, I had 50 jars of bettas. I've bred Mahachiensis, Embella, Smirdina, and Cosina. 3 years ago, one of my granddaughters wanted to do a fish project for her junior high school science fair. I suggested bettas because they were so easy. I'm paraphrasing, but 3 failed pairs, and he could not get a pair to work. The process took 3 months, including conditioning the breeders with live Daphnia. We ran out of time, so out of desperation, I set up an Embellis male with a splendid female and successfully spawned. She was able to set up 3 tanks at the science fair, one with a male, one with a female, one with the fry. And he ends his email with, again, I ask, what is with domestic bettas these days?
They're
It's-
crap.
Yeah. So I'm going to give my rant on. I really hate the phrasing like to inbred. The problem is improper culling.
That's an excellent distinction.
And a lot of the commercially available beta strains are not culled at all.
Yeah.
They're not being selected for in ways they should be, and so that's the problem. Getting domestic strain betas from hobbyist breeders or people who are breeding show betas, like they're breeding for like vitality, like part of the show. Like it's when you're trying to breed for fish that show well,
Yeah.
you're inadvertently breeding for a fish that has a good immune system.
Right.
Like a fish doesn't show off if it doesn't feel good.
Right. Yeah. So my friend who I mentioned earlier in the podcast about the size of betta bulls, the guy who was listed as the best betta breeder in the world in 1994, he is one of the people who helped develop the Half Moon strain. And one of his regrets in life is selling his first female. And he sold that female to some breeders in Thailand,
Mm.
and watched within a year the price of half moon bettas drop to almost the same price as a regular show betta, because they just took that one female and bred tens of thousands of fish. Obviously not from that one female, right? They bred six more, and then those bred six more, and then those bred six more from that one fish. So the genetics of that fish are just so. How would you describe that, Charles? Like, that would be diluted is not the right term, but
I feel comfortable saying degraded.
Degraded.
So
that's
like,
the word I was
anything,
looking for.
it's concentrating the worst parts of them,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
diluting
So
it.
Right.
In population genetics, like one of the tells for how well you can predict how many deleterious alleles exist in a population is how long has it had sustained growth.
Yeah.
And so like a great example of that, and I'm going to bring it close to home, humans don't handle inbreeding well because we have so many deleterious allele, because we've had unchecked population growth for about 10,000 years.
Right.
That like that functionally means like we've had no selective pressure for that long. And so think about that in this context where like you go that many generations without selective pressure, because in order for populations to grow that fast, selective pressure has to go way down.
Right.
There's also no economic pressure on the people producing those fish to produce healthy fish.
Yes.
If anything, at this point, it's become a marketing strategy to produce unhealthy fish, because the only people still buying bettas from stores that sell them in cups are people who feel bad for them.
Yep.
Right, it's true. I think, by the way, your choice to cross the domestic splendens with the wild type, what was the embellis? Two things on that. One, chances are very good that splendens already had some embellished genes in it. It probably, in fact, it's very unlikely that it was a pure splendens offspring. But number two, bringing in a wild gene makes total sense on why that was a wild type gene. Makes total sense on why that was more successful.
Yeah.
Also, a male that still has parental instincts.
Right.
I'd also like to throw out there that I have seen many embellis that were very clearly hybridized with feral splendens.
Yeah, that's true too.
They look different. I have a quick anecdote. The tiger barbs, I finally figured out what they are. They are not the species that we ordered.
No?
No.
The ones you took home.
The ones that I took
Yeah.
home. It took me weeks to figure it out. They are Anchisporus, the species, Puntigris Anchisporus, that were hybridized at some point with feral Puntigris tetrazona. It took me a while to figure it out because it's a hybrid, so it has some funky features.
How did you determine that with confidence?
I spent weeks with a taxonomic key from multiple different sources.
Counting rays and
counting
everything?
fin rays, counting like how many scale widths is the second black band? Do they have a complete lateral line or an incomplete lateral line? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's cool.
But also kind of a bummer.
A little bit.
Good to know, though.
My beer is empty.
Ooh. I would wager we're about halfway through only. I will be if you want.
We're about an hour in.
That's good.
Those are good. Can I have a little? Is that what you're drinking? Yeah. Just let me have like a little.
I mean,
The pumpkin spice.
your last session was a little short, so if this one's a little
That's
long, it's
true.
fine.
Listener questions can be a little long.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Be interested to see how people like the Puffer episode.
Ichabod.
I don't know. I'm surprised you like that.
Which is this? The
Is it like
pumpkin spice one?
cinnamony or yeah?
Nutmeg
I'm allergic to
Shut up, Nick.
Yeah, I don't know. Not for me. It's tasty, but it's not like.
Ooh, I like the tail end on that a lot.
Feels like a gingerbread cookie or something.
Yeah,
Mm.
and it. See,
Well, the mic is.
I had about a half. I'll be good.
All the humor that we have here about me being contrarian is the exact opposite in the lab. I'm in a lab predominantly of women, and I'm the basic white bitch because I like pumpkin spice, avocado
Taylor
toast.
Swift.
Yeah,
Who
Taylor
doesn't
Swift.
like avocado toast?
I do love Kesha.
And everybody turned on Kesha though.
Yeah.
Charles, do you think you're the only person in the world that has practiced sword fighting and listens to Taylor Swift?
That is a
I
good
wonder,
question.
that overlap might be greater than we think, honestly, based on every swordsman I've ever known. And it is several.
It's still really funny.
It's good.
All right, are we?
All right, let's do
settling
this. What's next?
out? Nice.
I wanted to continue and finish your question. You're like, that's kind of sad. I'm going to treat them like they're captive strain tiger barbs that have some new genes.
Yeah, there you go. I like it.
Sure.
Cool, but you were on the hunt,
I was.
so
For
kind of
real tiger
kind of
barbs.
sad.
Yeah,
try
for
again.
this particular species.
Anything in that thread? I see that thread moving a little bit.
It
Anything
is.
you want to talk about?
Couple of saltwater questions, but they're kind
Okay.
of dense ones.
We'll get to those, I think, at the.
Yeah.
We're going to do with the people that wrote in first, and then we'll get to some of those saltwater ones I like.
Sure.
Yeah, because we did send them emails saying that we would
Mhm.
answer their
Yeah.
questions.
Oh, show.
Here's a question from Rui, R-U-I. I'm surely not saying that right.
Yeah.
I said, I loved your episode on live food. You convinced me that it's a good option. Can you tell me if you have any cheap goldfish to give to my Oscars?
You've just been banned.
Banned from the chat.
Man, I don't know what that means, but you are now.
Yeah.
There will be a picture on the front of the store with your face on it that says, do not allow entry.
Right. Unless he brings a six-pack. That's it. He should
That's
be
the
punished.
only way to make
Yes.
it right.
Yep.
Mhm.
Don't
But
worry.
it's every time. One and 6-pack, one entry.
We know you were joking, and we'll take
Yes,
the joke. I like
No,
that. I
it's
appreciate
funny. And they also
No,
said,
I'm not gonna.
love the show. Keep up the great work. We are good help.
it. Thank you very much.
All right, next from Adam W. I'm setting up a 125-gallon Wallstad dirted tank.
Jeez.
Thought it'd be cool for most of my background plants to be swords exclusively. What are some of the group's favorite sword-type plants?
What's the one with the red in it?
There's a bunch
Red
of
Well,
flame,
like
red Reuben, red
20
melon.
of them.
Red Radican, because I like the name.
Maybe you're thinking of the Atlansberg,
I think you're right.
where they get that deep, almost purple red.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Because we've had a couple really good specimens of those in the
Yeah.
store. Sword
Got
or
any on the
sword type?
website right now?
No.
Favorite swords, I think, in general.
Yeah.
I'm always gonna say Uruguayensis. It's the narrow
Great
leaf sword.
and it's like a
Ooh.
medium.
Those are cool.
But it'll
does it-
still get
it
a
does.
good. Those ones in that 100-gallon tank are from the bottom to the top.
Oh, okay.
So probably almost 18 inches.
What, Amy, you know this better. What are the swords that stay kind of, because those are unique, the ones that stay kind of medium.
The
Oh.
rosette sword,
Yeah.
which is, so I think Amazon swords in general have been put into the species Grisbacchiae. Does that sound right?
You sound
They're not
confident.
Amazonicus or whatever they were anymore.
That makes
But
sense.
I think that the big Amazon sword and the rosette sword are considered the same species, but it's just a variant that stays really, really small.
I hate plants.
Yeah.
Calder, whenever we're talking about plant taxonomy, he's like, yeah, and then this is polyploidy and it's hybridized with it. And I'm like, God, I hate plants.
So,
Like,
yeah, if you see them labeled the Tropica, the Rosette, those are the smaller one.
Those are fun ones, but probably not a good
In a 125,
background.
they could be big. So I like
Yeah.
red ocelot swords.
Mm.
Just classic.
Yeah.
Yep. red
I'm going to
ocelot.
vote sparkle swords.
ooh,
Those
good
are
one.
fun.
The
Those
kind
are
of
fun.
longer with an oval-shaped leaf on the end.
Mhm.
Is a
I really
diff-
like a
little different.
marble queen with that like extra white splotches on it.
Nice.
Can't really go wrong with any big sword if you need a big sword.
I agree.
A 125 Wallstad sounds fun.
It does.
Cool. Next question from Adam is, I constantly hear you mention dreamfish. Have you ever had the chance to acquire
Mm.
some of these fish since the
Minor
last time
prince,
you mentioned
yes.
it? Do you even remember the species you mentioned in earlier episodes?
Yes.
Yes. I currently have macrostoma. Beta macrostoma.
That's a check.
I know in a very early episode, I was like, I'm going to use the word bitching. I was bitching that like a few years earlier, I'd gone to a swap and someone had bet a sticktose and I passed because I was like, I don't have anywhere to put it. And then I could never find them.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I literally was like, if I find them again, I don't care what's in any of my tanks. I'm bringing them home and I will make it work. So I ended up having to import my own pair from Thailand. Totally worth it. The Hellfrix I took home that one time,
Yeah.
Firefish,
Mhm.
that was
Yep.
one of those fish that I'd been thinking about for a long time.
Neohedrandria elegans, I had 3 pairs. Then I had 2 pairs and an extra. Then I had 2 pairs. Then I had a pair and an extra. Then I saw 2 babies show up. Then they disappeared. Now I have none. So I've had Neohedrandria elegans. That's definitely one of my holy grail fish. We've had Ultims in here. I don't currently keep them. That's a holy grail fish for me.
But I don't know why those didn't work.
I don't know what happened with the Neohedrandrias.
With those tiny live bearers, it's like almost normal that sometimes you lose them all.
Yeah.
need,
Well, they have like a
colony.
I don't want to call it normal, but
Yeah.
it is a common phenomenon that we don't really understand why it happens.
They have a
sometimes.
2 to 3 year lifespan. So
Right.
unless they're reproducing well, you're gonna lose them.
If you're not growing in the population, you're declining.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
yeah, so
Kind of like those
shrimp
fish where if we're not
colonies.
feeding them, they're starving.
Yeah,
Um,
tough.
I
That
think
sucks.
Epistogramma Panduro was on my top 5 holy grail, and I've had those. I don't currently.
You do
Yeah.
kind of.
I got
Yeah.
some panda loaches that was just wrong fish, wrong tank, wrong time.
Yeah.
Didn't work out.
I don't think I ever put it on any of my like holy grail lists in an episode. I'm about 97% sure I never did. But the Percula pair I have now was one of those like back of my head holy grails because
Mhm.
We
I
might have talked about that at that time.
because we had talked to Sustainable Aquatics, and yes, I'm going to call them out on this because
Sure.
they were absolutely accommodating and delightful and nice. I was like, man, I really want a Percula clownfish pair with a collection location. I don't think I'm ready to work with a wild caught pair. So we talked to Sustainable, and we were like, the next best thing are F1s. Can you give me F1s with a collection location? And their response was, which location do you want?
Yeah, that was pretty sweet.
It's so great when we get
and
that.
I like was like Papua New Guinea because in the back of my head I was like, that import out of there is much rarer. That's really cool. And we got them in, and that's the pair I've had for over a year. That I was so grateful to Sustainable.
Yeah.
I sent them like a personal email thank you, and they emailed back and they were really happy. I sent them an update recently. They were really nice about it.
That's very cool.
Cool.
Always fun when you can be reminded that most of the other people in the industry are fish geeks too.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
The same like high we get when we get to connect somebody with the
Yeah.
thing they need.
Yeah.
All levels of the scale, people get that.
Yep.
Finally, someone asked.
Yeah.
Cool. Next, we have some questions from Emil M. Says, I love all your podcasts. I really appreciate you putting time and energy into them. I like some of the older episodes where you would describe tank ideas. So here are my questions.
Okay.
Can you give us an exciting breeding project that works as a display aquarium? Can you include aquascape plants and tank mates?
Clownfish.
Wait. Can I add a caveat here? Maybe one we
Yeah.
haven't said before.
Yeah.
Because there are a fair amount of examples that I think we have done. Some dwarf cichlids, clowns I think have come up. Can you come
Probably.
up with any
Wait,
others?
I'm
Can we
always
whittle down the scenario? It's a breedable display fish.
And he says plants, so let's assume
Oh,
freshwater.
with plant.
Yeah.
Let's assume freshwater.
I am going to always push the marine fish breeding because we don't have enough marine fish breeders. Like basically every marine fish breeding situation is a display tank if you're a hobbyist. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick to the question though, and a lot of the egg scatterers, if you
Mm.
keep them as species only, right, and even white clouds, if you did a 20 long, well planted aquascape tank, you want to have some dense plants, so some good mosses, or I've got some Saswassertang, something where the fry can
great
hide.
Pogo stellatus.
The that's true. That would be really good too. But something that's going to get some density to it, so the fry have some places to hide, and then put like 20 white clouds in it. I think that's going to be an absolutely incredible display. And the white clouds should have the opportunity then to reproduce in that tank, and babies should have the opportunity to grow up. We have done tanks like that with we even did that with SB Resboras, and we've done that with
I'm really hoping those Royal Emperor Tetras are going to be the next one.
Ooh.
Yes. I've seen that with
They're
regular
trying to
Emperor
spawn.
Tetras where babies would just show up in the tank. So pick your favorite egg scatterer. Do a great aquascape with dense planting. It's hard to go into the details of exactly every plant I would use.
Anything fluffy.
Anything fluffy.
We just had somebody
Ambulia
in
or
today that had a display of a pair of egg scattering killies.
oh, that'd be good. Yeah.
Lagos red bivitatums.
Nice.
And it will just happen.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't really matter how fancy the fish is. Like,
Yeah.
it will just happen.
I think it was Evers. He wrote an article in Amazonas that it has a really goofy title, like the lazy way or the easy, like the no effort way to breed corridors. And it's basically like a corridors display where he's like purposely like, and then Fry will show up like, this is how I back burner breed species that I'm not actively trying to.
I've heard a lot of people doing cories that way too. Is this where I say any bonded pair of cichlids again?
Yes, I think I was hoping you would. Yes, for
That's
sure.
the most fun idea.
Because I
that comes to
mean,
mind.
that pair with the cloud of babies around them, it's hard to have a more
amazing.
impressive display than that.
Yeah.
That's something like everyone's going to be drawn to. It's babies.
Yeah.
We love babies.
They're
We
not
get to see them.
they're not necessarily bonded, but we do have some confirmed pairs of Apistos for sale
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that might get you there with a little bit of trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
Apistos are a great one for that because if you did a 20 long, again, lots of good plants, lots of cover, with a pair or a harem of some kind of Apisto, and then a big group of pencils, that's like the classic dither. So
Yeah.
any of those cichlids that need a dither, that dither could be a display group of some really cool shoaling fish.
What a great, gorgeous display already, just
Yeah.
with those fish in it.
Yeah.
And then if they breed and you get some babies too, that's just cherry on top.
Yep, I agree. Rotala rotundifolia as a nice, easy rotala. Put some crypts in there. Just good, easy plants. If your focus is on a breeding display, some good, easy plants, moderate to lower light.
Some of the more narrow-leaved vals.
The Valseria Nana Yaba Creek.
Yes.
That has been.
So you were right on the same page there.
Yeah,
I
for
was
sure.
like, that has been amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
That texture with Rotala rotundifolia
Yeah.
would be like, that texture difference would be really cool.
I'm
Like with
actually
those like pink tops with a little bit of spots, and you get that same effect
Right.
on the Rotala, so totally different textures but
Ooh.
similar color grade. Ooh, that would be pretty.
That'd
my
be awesome.
long-term plan with the Amphisemian fulgens is that I have split them up into 1 trio, 2 pairs in like 2.5 gallon tanks. I'm going to start breeding them, and if I get the numbers shored up, I want to set up a display with Val because they're mop spawners, so they should
That'd
spawn
be so beautiful.
in the Val.
Yep, I like it. Great question.
Last one from Emil. This is a topic that I've heard a few questions on recently that I don't know anything about. If you had to put a big refugium on your freshwater aquarium, how would you set it up and how would you do it?
Ooh.
The live food episode got me thinking about ways I could plumb an upstream refugium into my tank that I could use to breed live food.
That was something Ken was really interested in when he worked
Yeah.
there.
It's a cool concept.
Marina has their breeder boxes that sit. It's an air-driven breeder box that sits outside of the aquarium.
But
And I'm not
still
nec-
exchanges water with the
does.
interior.
Yeah, so it just uses an air-driven water movement system. So it's just gently pumping a little bit of water into that breeder box, which means a little bit's going to flow back out of it. So that on the side, and then as far as refugium goes, you could put a light on it and put a bunch of moss in it. You could put leaf litter in it. Refugium is a broad stroke word. When it comes to saltwater, there are dark refugiums, there are light refugiums, there are rock refugiums. Anytime you're creating a structure for things to live on, what does that mean? Well, exactly.
Outside of your main display.
But that leaf litter and some moss, that might just establish the population of microinvertebrates that we talked about earlier in the episode. And that could be a really cool thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure if people who ask about freshwater refugiums fully understand why people do it in saltwater.
Right.
Because I think for most saltwater keepers, the like live food generating aspect of the refugium is actually the smallest part of it.
Right.
Mostly it's nutrient export.
Right.
And for freshwater, my solution is almost always going to be just do a water change.
Right.
But with saltwater, that becomes more complicated and more expensive.
Yeah.
So if you can export nutrients without doing a water change, that's going to save you a lot of money over time. That's usually what's drawing people into doing it.
That's a good point.
That being said, just having a separate space for microorganisms and small invertebrates to grow could be a fun project on its own. But I don't know that you couldn't do that with just putting really dense plant growth in your main display.
Sure.
I like it.
Next question is on live foods as well. Skylar S says, can it be effective to soak live foods in medication to treat fish?
Yes, we do it on a regular basis.
But to do live foods. To
Oh,
soak.
live foods.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
I've never.
No.
Frozen foods, 100%. I don't know about live.
Any medication that you're feeding is probably going to kill the live.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and will soaking actually absorb it into the organism itself if it's alive?
Okay, so here's the disclaimer. We don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's some theories
Yeah.
on what might or may not happen.
Yeah. In most cases, though, these medications are specifically broad invert killers.
Yeah.
And so, like, probably going to kill whatever life.
But okay,
Like,
what about
statistically
Gutload
speaking.
metronidazole.
yeah,
That
Yeah.
to me is like that's the gentle one.
yeah,
Yeah.
or some of the antibiotics?
Yeah, maybe.
But wouldn't it be
See-
better to feed them food that had it in it
Yeah,
than to just
for sure.
put them in it?
Because the thing is that like the advantage that you're going for if you're feeding a live food here is you're trying to gut load it.
Mm-hmm.
And so like you're assuming that this organism is going to either absorb it or ingest it, or like in the case of a rotifer, like filter feed it in. And that gets like really tricky really fast. Like if you notice that like most like gut loading protocols are like we do this for like an hour, and that's because like a lot of people are like, oh, it takes an hour to do this. Actually, what's happening is that like you put so much of whatever you're gut loading in there that like it's going to be toxic in a few hours. So like these gut loading protocols are meant to be quote unquote terminal. Like you do them and then you pull them out and do something with them. And so I'm not sure the mechanism here, how you could effectively get a therapeutic dose into something in that situation.
Frozen foods to me are the best way to deliver.
Yeah. Or even
And if you're
Or a
maybe even like a
medicating,
freeze dried food.
Yeah,
if you're medicating, nutrition isn't your primary
right.
concern.
It's
Yeah.
getting
So
the medication.
get
to
them
them.
whatever they will eat and soak
Yeah.
it in medication.
All right, so if we break down the scenario, sometimes there are fish that they just won't eat prepared foods.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe the question could be, okay, my trumpet knife, that's a fish that I had that I only ever got it to eat blackworms, live blackworms. And what if that needed a medication?
Yeah.
Blackworms suck up all kinds of stuff. I think they could absorb antibiotics without
Yeah.
deleterious effects.
Is
At
a
least
more
not-
is a trumpet knife a mormarid?
Yes,
So then all the rules go out the window.
that's true.
But then that's all I had.
That's it. Yeah. All right. So basically,
Any
what
other fish that isn't
here's
the
our
mormarid
conclusion.
in the same scenario.
no idea.
Yeah. I would say comfortably you would be more effective doing a medicated dry food or soaking a freeze dried food in a liquid that has the medication
Because
dissolved.
then it'll
in.
really absorb
Then
it.
it'll really
Yeah.
absorb it. Frozen foods would be.
They should still be able to absorb it
I
from
think
the
the
liquid.
frozen foods would still be better.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that if you're doing a medicated food, you have better options.
Yep.
I feel comfortable saying that.
Yeah. I was just trying to come up with a scenario where it was the only option.
Yes.
Right.
South American leaf fish. Those
Yeah.
are very, very difficult to get to eat anything other than live fish.
But like,
And with a live guppy,
Yeah.
you could probably gut load that.
With like medicated flake.
Yeah,
Feed it
Metro Flake.
metronidazole
Wow.
flake
Yeah,
and
why
then
not?
feed it to your leaf fish, and that
Yeah.
could be effective.
Because like, but that's I know the fish is going to eat X amount that I give it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't. I wouldn't know how to quantify that with a blackworm.
Right.
You can still, can you even
Yeah.
quantify it with a guppy? But you
Yeah.
can get closer.
You can get closer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting question.
Good one.
I've never
Oh.
thought about that before.
Is everybody still thinking about their favorite question?
No.
Real quick, I have about 10 to 12 questions left
Okay.
on my sheet.
Yeah.
So we could easily do a little bit shorter prompts.
We could do part 1, part 2.
We
too.
could
could.
do part 1,
'Cause
part
we're-
2.
With the recording, which I think we started less than
7.
10 minutes early.
Yeah.
We're at 125.
All right.
That's not bad.
We might have to do a part 1, part 2.
Yeah,
For
I'm-
10 more questions. to give
Especially
them
because we've
time.
got we got some questions on the
A
on the
couple.
thread as well.
A couple.
Right.
I'm going to skip around a little bit.
Let's do a couple more
Feel free to.
because I don't think we've done 10 yet.
I don't know. Feel free to kind of shorter prompt them
Okay, sounds good.
if unless it's a really good one that you'd like to dive
These are
into.
fantastic, by the way.
Yeah,
Keep
there's
those
so
questions
many
Yeah.
good
coming.
questions.
There
Yeah.
are some dense ones too. Here's
Okay. Let's do a dense one.
You want a dense
Let's
one?
let's do a
You want
dense
Yeah,
one.
let's do one.
Whatever.
Let's get into
Ben's
one of
vibe.
them.
It's a vibe thing here.
It
right?
is.
Like that's
Yeah,
the
let's
thing.
do it.
I'm digging for a really good one.
Okay.
This I don't know if this one's dense, but it's one we've talked about before.
Are any of them like a punch in the face?
I get a pee, so I can give you some time to
Okay, yeah.
Okay,
Let me
we'll
dig
do a
a
little
little bit.
pause here.
Are you okay if I answer thread question?
Yeah.
Unless we want to do that. No, go ahead. Let's do it. Let's answer.
I think they're
Yeah.
ones that
They could be squeezed.
we
in.
don't necessarily need to get in. We
Cool.
can- we
Yep,
can
do
just
it.
answer.
Because I kind of want to direct them at Ben.
Okay, so that sounds cool. Go for it.
What kind of beginner coral can live in medium flow and grow in white light and hardy to live in tap water with salt water? Yeah.
Why are you using tap water?
Okay, so let's just break that down a little bit. First, we need the tap water is a broad term.
Yes. That's why I wanted to throw
Right.
this question at you. I was being mean.
Yes. All right. So my first reef tank was tap water.
Yeah.
Because I was new and it was 30 years ago and it was all we had. And I grew green star polyp, and I grew leather coral, and I grew yellow polyp. Just fine. No problems at all. And I would even I also grew macroalgae like crazy. I had Caulerpa take over the tank. So
Mm.
I would say in a system like that, and maybe even any of the macroalgae systems that you want to grow some coral in, Kenyan tree coral, some of the leather corals, green star polyp would be just fine.
Yeah, the thing to keep in mind here is that in Michigan alone, we've seen tap water that has pH ranging anywhere from like 6 to like 8.5,
Right.
which translates into a TDS of anywhere between like 40 and like 500.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about what we know, right? Which is
Yeah.
Grand Rapids tap water, which usually has a TDS of around 150 to 220
Yeah.
and a pH of around 7.4 to 7.8. Once you mix the salt mix in it, it should be fine, but it's going to be very, very high in phosphate.
It's going to be high in phosphate. I also experimented with it here. Your alkalinity is going to be really high too.
True.
I think and this is just basic instant ocean, no
Mhm.
frills, no whistles, no bells, nothing.
Yeah.
And with our tap water and instant ocean, I think I was mixing alkalinity at like 14.
Jeez.
And so I was like,
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
That's enough to burn a lot of SPS corals.
It's true. Yeah. Those nutrient-rich soft corals
Yeah.
are what I would say. And I don't think you're doing something wrong if you're keeping a tank like that,
Yeah.
honestly. Whereas usually I would say if you're not doing ROs in a reef tank, you're doing something wrong. If you're focusing on a high nutrient system,
yeah.
macroalgae and those kinds of corals, yeah, go for it. And then those are the three, like some of the basic leather corals, green star polyp, and yellow polyp.
Yeah. And like honestly, know your tap water. Test it, know what it is, and know how to work with it. Experiment, get a small bucket of instant ocean and play around with it. See
Yeah.
what your parameters come out at.
Yeah.
Know what you're working with.
Grand Rapids, phosphate.
High
High.
phosphate.
High.
I think our desired phosphate range is like 0.5 to like 0.1 0.05 to 0.1, sorry.
Yeah.
Wrong decimal point. and our tap water frequently comes out at 2 parts per million.
Yeah.
That's orders of magnitude difference.
That's much higher. Like, so in our high tech freshwater planted tanks, we don't need to dose phosphate.
Yes.
Right.
We need to dose a lot of nitrogen to make up for the lack of
Yes, and then lots
for
of
the extra
potassium
phosphate.
to make up for it.
Yeah.
Is there another one? Was that it?
The previous one was actually like
It was, can you use tap water for salt water, and what type of beginner coral can live in medium flow, light, white
Yeah.
light, and tap
Yeah,
water?
I think that's what we just
yeah.
addressed. while
What
you
kind
were
of
out
fish?
the room.
Clownfish.
Clownfish, damsels.
Any super hardy and or captive bred fish?
Yeah. The first person who bred coral beauties did it in tap water, salt water.
But he didn't do it in Michigan.
She.
So
Yeah.
she
She.
didn't do it in Michigan, so we don't know what their tap water was like.
St. Louis. So softer, but not
Yeah.
soft.
Yeah. Yep.
Clean water.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing to keep in mind. You got to know what your tap is,
Right.
because these salt mixes are designed to go with you're starting at 0. You're not starting at 0 with tap water, so you need to know where you're starting.
Right.
The benefit of RO is you don't have to carve your own path.
Yeah.
It just is.
Okay, so this question was clearly from somebody who wants to go way beginner.
Yeah.
Right. So if you don't know what your parameters are, you can check your municipality to find out if you've got phosphate added to the water. But then, yeah, like we just talked about, there's the beginner where you don't necessarily want to or need to do a bunch of testing. Do those water changes. You got to do those water changes. And RO water's cheap if you can find a good source for it. If you're local, it's not very expensive to buy a bit of that to top up with fresh water.
And there are strategies to limit water changes too.
Yeah.
So that it's not as expensive.
Yep, exactly.
All right.
All right, let's get back into it.
Ready to hop back in?
Yep.
Cool. Here are some questions from Kyle W.
'Kay.
This is an interesting one. I'm curious what everybody says. I think we've all had some close calls with equipment safety. What about livestock? Have you guys ever had a safety incident with livestock that sticks in your memories? Poked or stuck or bit by something?
I have gotten poked by a dead dwarf lionfish.
You have.
I have.
What was that like?
It was like a really mild bee sting. It was
Yeah?
actually I knew that I had to be cautious. And so I was scooching the dead lionfish into a plastic bag in the aquarium. And when I pulled the plastic bag out of the aquarium, it flopped and swung around and got me in the wrist. Because the spine poked through the plastic bag and got me in the wrist. And it was notable that I had gotten stung by something, that I had venom in me.
Then you're probably fine.
Mhm.
I got stung by one of those long spine urchins when I first started here at the old
Oh,
place.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
have stories actually.
Yeah. I've gotten
I
those in
don't
me.
really remember that.
Urchins they amaze me.
Can
The
I-
sharpness of the spine of a sea urchin is
Can I
amazing.
share a
to
good
me.
one?
Yeah.
So I can't remember where we were. I think it was a service account, and you said I was with you, Ben, and you
Yeah.
said, "Hey, watch that long spine urchin. They're no joke."
Yeah.
You said they're so sharp, they're like a hypodermic needle. And then you look the other way, and I'm like, well, they can't be that sharp.
Yeah.
And I gave it a poke, and it was like nothing. It like slipped through me like a knife in butter, and
Yeah.
it was meant to just be like a test, like feel.
Yeah.
And it like a needle.
Guess what? It's
Yeah,
sharp.
It was
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now I listen to you sometimes.
Sometimes. You don't very often, but sometimes you do. As a demonstration for a kindergarten class, I set a long spine urchin on the palm of my hand. So that's the most calloused part of your hand, and it's the weight of that urchin. That is, you'd have to measure that in grams. And I don't even know how many it would be, but it's
like nothing.
like nothing. And I set that in the palm of my hand and then put it back. And I had 5 little puncture marks
Yeah.
from the weight of the urchin into the callus portion of my hand. It is amazing how sharp those are.
My real good story, real quick, was I got bit by Thea.
Ooh.
Oh, did
yeah.
you?
Yes.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I was hand feeding her. So, like you said, I've never been bit because I'm careful. I'm not that careful.
Right.
Um,
No, No, I'm not interested in getting bit by anything.
It was kind of cute, but she bit me. She actually, I was feeding her silver sides, and she kind of missed the silver side as I handed it to her, and she kind of like doubled around and got me in my wrist, like kind of my
Ooh, the nice soft, delicate skin.
Yeah.
and she got like a pretty good chunk. And then when she let go, it looked like almost like lipstick,
Aw.
like a ring of lipstick.
Like,
where
so it didn't break skin. It was just like the suction.
You got a
was-
hickey from Thea.
no, it wasn't suction, but it was like a bunch of teeny tiny punctures.
Okay.
Is what it
Oh.
was.
Okay.
So it was like it felt like a rug burn or something.
Right.
Yeah, I got not any of the sharks here, but when I was first working with bamboo shark, I did get one. Like, I went to grab a shark that was underneath a rock, and I didn't realize there was another shark in the cave, and I must have tickled her nose.
Just put your finger right in her face.
So
Yeah.
she bit my finger, and this is a fish that could like crack open a clam if she wanted to. And I was
She
like,
could break your finger.
yeah, I was like, if she
Yeah.
bites down, that's it. Like,
Yeah.
there's no finger. And like, I like slowly extracted my hand, and then like as my hand was coming out, I saw her look at me and then like be like, "Oh, that's not food," and spit it out. I was still missing, like, it looked like someone had taken like a ring of skin off.
Wow. Nice. You got bit by a shark.
I
yeah,
did.
That's
it
so
is pretty
badass.
Cool.
But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
bunch of tiny puncture marks is how I
Yeah.
describe it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it was interesting. It shocked me, and there was like one customer nearby, and he like wasn't looking when it happened, and I was able to play it off like it didn't. Devin saw it though. I think Devin saw it.
That's good.
Couple
Of all
more.
the people.
Yeah, a couple more from Kyle W here. Who is your aquarium idol?
Takashi Amano.
Great answer.
Don't even have to think about that one.
Great answer.
Yep.
What about your like underdog idol? Like somebody you think is really cool that everybody thinks Takashi's cool.
Probably Bob Fenner.
Yeah.
Becomes tough because we don't watch YouTubers. That's like what people want to hear.
Yeah.
Crystal Castleman. Nobody ever talks about
Oh,
her.
for sure.
Great
And
one.
she's like an absolute legend.
It's hard for me to think of her as an idol because I think of her as a friend.
Yeah. But she's incredible, and like she's produced so much information, and you rarely hear her be referenced that
Yeah.
often.
We stayed up like with a group of us until like 3:00 in the morning talking to
Yeah.
Crystal.
On a
She's awesome.
similar note,
Cool.
Dennis Wong.
Yeah, that's true. He's pretty great too.
But I wouldn't say he's an underdog, but he is a valuable voice of reason.
But
Yeah.
your idol can even be somebody nobody knows, like your mentor. Like I know Charles had a mentor growing up. Like it doesn't have to be somebody with like
Yeah.
credentials even.
I'm going to give two answers, and I think for a lot of people they're going to come out of left field. But Julian Sprung,
Mm-hmm.
he is like it feels really weird, but he's like a coral scientist.
Yeah.
And he does all sorts of weird things. Like he's got he lives down south, so he has a tridacna clam pond
Mm-hmm.
with mangroves growing in it.
That's so cool.
And Soren Hansen from Sea and Reef Aquaculture. He is a aquaculture scientist who happens to be producing fish commercially for the hobby. But what's really cool about him is he's affiliated with a university. So like his hatchery is used by university students to do research.
That's so cool.
It's really cool.
Amy.
Crystal was my one.
Yeah.
Crystal and Dennis, but
That's a great one.
I don't know. I really have too many other idols that I don't see talked about
Yeah.
too much.
I don't have a super strong answer, but Calder put me on Kai the Fish Guy. He's a Reef Builders writer,
Oh, cool.
and he has some great stuff. All right, here's a question for Amy from Kyle.
Me?
He says, I too am a huge crustacean invertebrate nerd. I love all things creepy crawly. What is your favorite invertebrate and what is your dream tank focused on that? I'm setting up my dream mantis shrimp tank, a 120-gallon 4x2x2, all for him.
Dang.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's hard to beat like a big mantis shrimp as a dream invertebrate, just 'cause most of the invertebrates aren't super human focused. You know, they're just not going to be out. They're not really going to be interacting with you. So that's definitely up there. I mean, really, any of the big filter feeders we can't really keep as the dream. the flame scallops, the feather stars, that kind of thing.
Sure.
But I don't know if we're ever really gonna unlock those. Oh, it's always gonna be a big mantis shrimp tank. Maybe one of the big spears would be a fun change because most people go for the smashers. So it'd be fun to do one of the ones you can pair as well, like the zebras.
Cool. You've done a little bit of research on this.
It's got to go to Roy's list. He's got it all.
Last one from Kyle here that I like. What is your favorite public aquarium you've ever been to?
Shed.
Yeah. Shed. Georgia's great.
Georgia's great.
Yeah.
They've been doing a lot of really cool, innovative stuff. They're very active in research and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's something like I'm trying to think of how to describe this. Like there's just something classic about Shed though.
It's both old and still doing cool new stuff.
Yeah. They're renovating a lot of their stuff right now too.
If I only had 3 hours and I had to pick one, I would go to Georgia. Right?
That's
Right.
a good way to put it.
Yeah.
If you had to go to one every week.
It would be Shed. And
Yeah.
I'd never run out.
Right?
Shed, there's just so much to
They
see at
pack
Shed.
so much in
Yeah.
there.
Oh, I love it. It's like old school. Yeah, you said it. Old school and new school. And Yep.
Yeah, it feels like they're always innovating, even though they do have some of those classic exhibits still up.
Now, if I go to Georgia Aquarium and I only have 3 hours, I'm just going to sit in front of that giant
I know.
window
Yeah.
for 3 hours.
absolutely incredible.
That's
is so
enough.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna sit there for 2.5 hours. I'm gonna spend a half hour in front of that Shark Tank.
Okay, that's fair.
Well, I
Yep.
mean, you gotta give a half hour to the Amazon stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
The Shed does the Amazon stuff better.
They do, but they do
They're
do it great.
renovating it. I've seen some of the designs.
Yeah.
They could really-
I'm really impressed with
Sheds
what
is or Georgia's?
Sheds.
Sheds.
There's a few tanks that could really use an overhaul.
Yeah.
So I
It
hope.
looks like they are having they've designed a dedicated Arapaima tank.
Nice.
Cool.
Great.
I can remember being 5 years old and sitting on the little ledges of the windows of that octagon tank in the middle of Sheds.
Yeah.
I still have that memory of looking up at people standing over me looking into that tank. So it's hard to not pick Sheds.
I did get to go to the Rotterdam Aquarium, which had like a big Arapaima like pond, which was pretty incredible, with like thousands of guppies
Mm-hmm.
around the edges.
Mhm.
If anyone's
That
been to
was
the
awesome.
Takashi Amano display in Portugal,
That is
that
We're
that's the
jealous.
bucket list
That's my
aquarium
top.
for me.
Yeah.
I have not been to Belle Isle, but I bet for a small aquarium that would be pretty up there for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Has anybody been to Audubon, New Orleans?
no,
That was a new one for me.
cool.
The Toronto Aquarium was great too.
Yeah.
Really cool.
We should do a group field trip.
I would love it. All right, let's do one more question, maybe two, and then we're gonna have to do a part two because these have been so good and so much fun.
I
Cool.
wish we
We're
could
gonna
spend
do it
more
again.
time on all of
Yeah.
them.
Just remember, if we didn't get to your question, we will. Oh yes, we will.
Yeah, I reached out to everybody that I was reading off today, and
Good.
if it sounds like we don't get to some, you'll
Yeah.
be on the next.
It's because the questions were so good and it's so much fun to talk about. So. What you got?
You can take a second to decide.
Yeah, if I got to narrow down now all of a sudden.
We've been talking for like an hour and 45 minutes now.
Yep.
I know, right? These are so fun.
And I
All right.
hate to not give them the attention they deserve.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm going to do two more. First one will be a decent topic, and the last one is, I think, one we've maybe seen before, but it's a good ending note.
Okay.
Cool. You ready?
Yep.
Mhm.
Question from Matt V. Can we talk about how to call responsibly? When, how, and why? I know it can probably be tricky to talk about while trying to
Call-
avoid people doing it, whatever. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm just going to. Can we talk about how to call responsibly? When, how, and why? I know it can be tricky to talk about while also trying to avoid people doing it to whatever fish they just don't want anymore.
So to me, responsible culling is first about genetics. And I think the most responsible way to cull is to have a predator. Have something to feed those to. Remembering that in the wild, 99% of the babies that are born ain't going to make it. They're going to get eaten by something. 99% is not necessarily the right statistic. I made that
For
up.
some fish,
It-
though, I think you're spot on.
Probably more like 99.9%, right? depending on the species and how many that they produce. So I think number one is cull deformities and find something to feed them to, because that's cool.
No.
Deformity is an easy. Listen, if something has a bent spine,
Yeah.
it's
But
not going to live to its full lifespan anyway, and it will still be difficult every moment.
Yeah. Charles, I think of the people sitting at this table, you've probably done the most culling of any of us.
Probably.
Maybe of the
So-
people in this state.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
The number's easily in the tens of thousands.
Yeah, how do you make that determination, let's say on the lab scale?
Yeah, in the lab scale, it's largely we're very selective. Like we have very small families. So like let's say there's a particular transgenic line that we're trying to maintain, but we only want a dozen fish per generation, and I might have bred 200 of them. Sorry, the other 190 are I'm going to pick the ones that have that look the best. And I don't necessarily mean the prettiest. Like I mean things like they don't have flared gills, they don't have bent spines, they don't have like the thing like they look the most right.
Right.
Are the ones that I keep. And in the laboratory setting that we're using we use thermal shock, and I think that's fairly humane. That's the word. Clove oil is one I've used a lot too. But it's mostly just about trying to find fish that are healthy. You want like fish that aren't behaving right, fish that don't have inflated swim bladders, fish that don't like fish that are abnormal in some way or just aren't performing as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever met a fish keeper that overculls.
No.
There used to be, and I'm going back 20 years back when I was kind of a newish club member. I was newish but established. So I don't know, 3 years in the club and pretty involved. And there was one of the old timers at the time who he had 3 or 4 different species of fish that he would breed regularly and sell them at the club, which I think is great. Bought a couple of bags of fish from him of 2 of the species that he was breeding, and regularly there were notable genetic deformities in those fish. So he was clearly not culling, and I consider that extremely irresponsible and sometimes even a little bit cruel.
Yes.
Yeah. Cruel and rude to the person you're trying to sell it to. Like,
Yeah,
that's not the most important part, but that's still an aspect of it.
Yeah, like one of the things, part of why I advocate for people to breed something for multiple generations is that they get a feel for the line.
Yeah.
And so, like, for example, you can selectively breed for specific traits, like our wild type strain of AB zebrafish. I'm actually breeding them to have larger clutch sizes and higher fertilization rate of the embryos. So it's like, so I start off with more fish than I want to keep. And then it's like, okay, and I'm just throwing out numbers. This is not what I do. But it's like these 30% females, they had the largest clutch sizes. They had the lowest like amount of embryos die. These males, they fertilized at the best rate. I'm going to keep these ones. The rest of them I'm just going to cull because they're like, it's an effort thing in the lab. Like if we can get more embryos from fewer fish, that's less fish we're using for research, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because there is a concept of like reduce use, reduce like pain and suffering, reduce. And so like the first step is, okay, what's the fewest number of fish we need to pull off this research?
Yeah. All right, so responsible culling. First thing to remember, in nature, they probably aren't going to survive.
A fish that doesn't swim well gets eaten.
Yes. Most of the fish that swim really well and are close to genetically perfect also get eaten.
Yes.
Most of them, right? One of the basic rules of ecology is that no population is either expanding or declining, which means any pair need only replace itself to maintain the population at its current density, not expanding or declining. So clownfish to me are just such a fun example. They produce 200 to 500 eggs every 2 weeks for 15 to 20 years and only need to have 2 of those to survive. I've done the math a couple of times. It's like 2 in 500,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
So culling is very, very natural. The way to do it ethically, to me, is either A, euthanize quickly and painlessly, thermal shock or clove oil are the two most common methods. Or B, find another use for that live thing, feeding something else.
Like preserve the energy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
No.
What does
Maybe that's too hippie.
thermoshock look like?
In our case, what we do is we make ice slurry so that the water is like really cold. But the trick is that we have to make sure that the fish are only exposed to the water, because if their skin touches the ice, it can cause ice crystals to form, and that triggers a pain response.
Mm.
And so what you're trying to do is just expose them to a drastic change in temperature so that it shocks their system, and they are basically knocked out in like 3 seconds.
Sure.
Yeah, slow freezing works too, but it's definitely more of a long, like, fall asleep and then not feel anything kind of thing.
Okay.
So there can definitely be some more stress if you just put a bag in a freezer.
I've heard there's definitely some little bit of a conflicting story as to whether or not that is ethical or not. So
Yeah.
here we use clove oil.
Yeah. That's a pretty simple way to do it.
Yep.
Really, if you don't have any of that stuff at home, the most humane way is as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
A good bunker smash.
Yep.
It
feels
feels
gross.
and you don't want to do it.
but it's so fast and instant.
Yeah.
It's very quick.
It'll stick with you, but it's not going to stick with them.
Yeah, and I want to expand on Ben's like nature culling thing.
Yeah.
I cull mercilessly, and that's because I operate under the philosophy that if I produce 3 fish from any single pair, I've done better than nature.
Right. That's a
Yeah.
great way to describe it.
Once I hit 3, I got nothing to prove, man.
Yep.
Insufficient culling is why, like we said earlier, why bettas aren't as good as they used to be.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
why
That's kind of a
guppies
full
aren't
circle.
bulletproof anymore.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Because it used to be you could just throw guppies in whatever tank and no matter the conditions, they would survive.
Yeah.
And now it's about 50% of guppies can barely swim.
Yeah.
That's sad.
It's a great question. I like
It's a
it.
tough topic, and Matt said, "Hey, you got my question," and right at the end. So thanks for sticking around until
Cool.
until we did.
Cool,
Yeah.
you bet, Matt.
I don't
Glad
know
to
if
do
you
it.
can overdo it, but you sure can underdo it.
Yeah.
All right, ready for the last one?
Yep.
Yeah.
Last question.
This last one is from Ryan S., who I'm a fan of. He owns a page called Swamp Drab.
Oh yeah,
Nice.
yeah, we see him tagged. at
Great
the
photography.
time to time.
And this might have come up elsewhere. But he says, how do we feel about podcasts from some local legends like Mike Manji? Talk about barbs. Chase talk about egg scatterers. Mike Helwig for live foods. Chris Carpenter for Shelley's. Pete G for bettas. And he's also including Ted Judy for Pistos. Those would be great guests to have. Have we thought about those at all?
A lot of them don't want to.
They just don't want to?
Yeah.
There's a couple of those on that list that I will reach out to, and I'm going to leave that as a surprise. But
Sure.
a couple of them we have reached out to, and they said, "Oh, I don't think
Yeah.
I'll do that anymore."
They-
But there's
Trust
a
me,
couple.
we've thought of it.
Yeah.
Fair.
Some of them are actually written on the board.
You're right over there.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all people
Ted's
we
name
really
is on
like
the board
and
behind
respect.
us. But yeah, for sure. Yep.
Not for lack of
Fun.
trying.
They've been doing it a long time.
That's fair.
Maybe
Some
they don't
people
really
just
want
don't
to
like-
talk about it.
Yeah, some people just don't like the microphone.
Yeah.
We had to
That's fair.
convince you of that,
I got used to it.
for sure.
Cool. Do you want to
I
end
like
it there? Save the rest for another episode, part 2, perhaps?
I think that's what we're gonna get. I think that's a good
Do we
plan.
want to do part 2 next week?
I think-
We've got next week open-ish. And then the week after that, I think we've got another Alicia podcast.
We do.
Brace yourselves for that one.
Can you do it next week, Nick?
I think we'd be a tad short if we tried to do it next week.
We've got. Didn't we do 10 questions tonight?
I was not counting. I wager we have about a half dozen left. So unless we get a bunch more between now and then, I think it would be
I think we can do it next week.
Yeah, let's say that, and we'll get some listener pop-ins, and
cool.
I
So
think we can.
we'll just
fill it.
push
Let's just do it
hard.
next week.
Yeah.
We'll push it hard.
call
Let's
to
do it.
action right now.
Yeah, right
Yeah.
now. We need like 3 or 4 more good questions, and
hmm
Yeah.
So if you've been
like,
holding on to them,
if you're
Yeah.
in the live stream, email them.
Bump 'em
If
in.
you're part of a club, bug your friends. Don't come on.
there's
Yeah,
always enough
like
for
it.
us to talk about, but
You
we
bet.
could always use a little bit more.
yep,
And you
for
can
sure.
email those to podcast@watercolorsaquariumgallery.com.
Yes.
And everyone who participated in the live stream, thank you very, 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 very much. You guys have been very chatty.
I'm gonna give another shout out to Will for bumping up our members. Man, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah.
Nick, fantastic job of putting these questions together and being a great host. As always, you do a fantastic job. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And we're going to be doing another public live stream next week, so any of you are free to join us. But if you want to continue to join us, then you should join our membership, which you can access on YouTube. Also, head over to watercolors.shop and see if there's anything that interests you. You can always email me if there's anything more you're looking for, and that's amy.b@watercolorsaquariumgallery.com.
Extra special thanks to all of our YouTube members out there. Thank you so much for listening. Let's have lots of fun and keep those hands wet. That was good.
That was good.
Well, we're still on the stream, so I just want to say normally we'd let you have some time for Q&A, but since we're sort of continuing next week, I hope you all hold off on your questions. Send them to Nick or bring them to the stream next week.
Yeah, for sure.
And we will be there for that.
If there is one or two more, do just send them to Nick right away. Just do that today. But thank you very much.
We get tired, so
yeah.
So we didn't have that much left to give you tonight.
That's right.
We will make sure that the hosts here pick out their favorite question, and we'll send something fun to our favorite submission for this week, and then we'll do the same for next week.
So good though. It's going to be really hard.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Cheers.